Global warming is an increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, especially a sustained increase great enough to cause changes in the global climate. Global warming has become a great problem in the world. But according to research, no continent will be struck as severely by the impact of the climate change as Africa. Given its geographical position, the continent will be particularly vulnerable due to the considerable limited adaptation exacerbated by widespread poverty. Climate is a particular threat to continued economic growth and to livelihood of vulnerable population. We are on the program Talking to Africa, and our today's topic, we are looking at which move should Africa as a continent take to reduce the effects of global warming. Remember, this is Talking to Africa and hosted by Matele Ngeno. Joining me to discuss this topic is a panelist of 4 members, and the first member is Mr. Samuel Karuga, who is a biochemist. Welcome, Mr. Karuga. Second is Ms. Jacqueline Chepngeno, who is an educationist. Welcome, madam. 3, we have Madam Pamela Nasimiyu, who is an environmental scientist. Welcome, madam. And 4, we have our own residential panelist, who is Mr. Jimmy Mjama, director of Christ Films Africa. Welcome, Mr. Mjama. Thank you very much. Okay, we want now to see about this problem of global warming. It has become a challenge not only to Africa. All over the world, we have this problem. Recently, we have heard of what we call the Paris Conference, which they were to discuss about which move should the world at large move to ensure that they reduce this problem. But today, we want to focus on how can Africa as a continent work together to ensure that this problem is reduced, if not eliminated.
But he also noted that thanks to science, we know its size and nature. Science alerts us to the gravity of the situation, but science also, and this special report in particular, helps us understand
The IPCC is an organization that's responsible for assessing all aspects of climate change, and we bring together the best scientists in the world, and we function under the directions and guidance and decisions of all the governments of the world. So therefore, what we provide is essentially the best science, which has a buy-in from all the governments of the world and to which all the governments are committed.
Ce nouveau rapport du groupe d'experts intergouvernemental d'évolution sur le climat nous donne une indication assez claire de l'état des connaissances scientifiques sur les différents aspects au développement des énergies renouvelables dans le contexte des changements climatiques. Et de manière beaucoup plus importante, le rapport donne une vue d'ensemble, une analyse de toute la littérature existante sur le lien entre, d'une part, le développement durable et d'autre part, les changements climatiques.
the heat waves, wildfires, and heavy rainfall events of recent months all over the world underscore these warnings. 3 weeks ago in New York, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described climate change as the greatest challenge of our time. But he also noted that thanks to science, we know its size and nature.
Now, my panelists, I would like to get your views about how is this problem, or how do you understand this problem on your own perspective. Let me start with Mr. Karuga.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ngeno. Yes. Now, global warming refers to an increase in the global temperature, which after a long time will lead to a change in the climate of the whole world. So, global warming and climate change are one and the same. After a long time of a recent temperature of the globe, even the climate change. After all, we shall have so many things changed. We are going to experience a lot of problems, talk about food security, talk about loss of biodiversity, talk about floods, talk about chronic diseases like malaria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karuga. Let me get the view of Madam Pamela here.
Thank you, Mr. Nene.
Yes, madam.
Now, global warming, as we all understand, is the rise in the global temperatures. And this has come about as a result of emissions of greenhouse gases, majorly carbon dioxide.
Yes.
And this has, the problem has, as we can now say, Africa has not contributed so much to the issues of global warming, because at the moment, research is putting Africa as having contributed not more than 4% of the CO2 emissions or carbon dioxide emissions. So the problem, we can all agree, that has been brought about by the developed nations, especially the industrialized countries, that through their industries, they emit a lot of carbon dioxide and methane gases into the atmosphere. And because of that, the temperatures are increasing all over. In Africa, all the countries will suffer from this problem of global warming.
Thank you very much. Let me get Madam Jacqueline.
Thank you. First of all, you have to know the causes of global warming, and that is the meaning of global warming, which is the increase or rise of temperature. And you find that if there's increase of rise in temperature, it's due to the human beings as Africans. We have caused the change of the climate due to the increase of vehicles, the use of oils from US. It causes carbon dioxide, as how my colleague said, and also the greenhouse gases that are emitted through planting of some plants in the greenhouse houses, thereby emitting some gases which are not conducive to the environment, increasing global warming.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mjama, let me get your view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matelengeno. I concur with our biochemistry, Samuel Karuga, Jacqueline, and Amela Nasiliu, that indeed global warming is affecting Africa. And some of the things that global warming is doing to Africa, as they have said, gas emission, carbon gas emission, is affecting livelihood of people in Africa, food productivity, and the water availability and overall security of African people. And as we can quote that the climate change vulnerability index 2015 that was taken, it shows that 7 out of 10 countries in Africa are facing this climate change in Africa. And since then, Africa has fallen short of rainfall over large parts of Africa, in sub-Saharan and Southern Africa, and increase of rainfall in Central Africa. And we see these things has caused what we call impact of weather pattern. And I do concur with my panelists that indeed Africa need to look for solution of this matter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mjama. So we all agree that this is a problem which exists in Africa. And as we continue, I remember the saying of the former World Bank chief economist known as Sir Nicholas Stern. He said that climate change is the greatest market failure the world has ever seen. And why did he say that? He said that because the developments which the world want to have, the industrial developments which the world is facing every now and then. We hear the Western countries saying we are coming up with this, the Eastern countries, they want to come up with this. We hear the Chinese coming up rapidly with a lot of industrial revolution. With the industrial revolution now, it is good for everyone. every country wants to be industrialized. But the failure which comes in is the emission which we get from those industries. The emission we get from those industries is what is now causing the problem of climate change. Now, as we move along, this problem is caused majorly by industries. How do we handle that? Let me start with Mr. Mjama. What is your view on the industrial revolution which is causing this problem?
Okay, I concur with you that really Africa is facing a problem. And if I can quote that flooding in most part of North Africa, that was recorded in 2006, that ended up killing 800 deaths and loss of property. And again, we can quote that in Mozambique, it ended up displaced 2 million people, and 1 million end up losing property. Mm-hmm. So we are in a process that Africa should look for a solution that you have mentioned, because every country needs to do what we call making sure that its industry is working. And we see that there are some of the things that industry must use, maybe coal, gas, and these are things that are causing what we call those carbon emissions. And I think the solution lies with what we call experts and learners. Because when we point out that coal is not important, coal is important to many people, but it has its disadvantages that has caused in Africa. And we can't say that we stop mining coal, but we have to think and rethink how we can use coal, but in a little disadvantage to human beings.
The eyes of the world have been on Paris for weeks. Now, the eyes of millions of people around the world are on you.
France accueille 150 chefs d'État et de gouvernement. C'est au nom de la justice climatique que je m'exprime aujourd'hui devant vous. C'est au nom de la justice climatique que nous devons agir.
The planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue, and I would urge you to talk to your governments and make the point quite clearly that education is the most powerful weapon for delivering on climate change.
It is an agreement of conviction. It is an agreement of solidarity with the most vulnerable. It is an agreement of long-term vision, because it is an agreement of commitment to turn this new legal framework into the engine of safe growth for all for the rest of this century. We end this COP celebrating a new chapter of hope for the world.
Le 12 décembre 2015 restera une grande date pour la planète. À Paris, il y a eu bien des révolutions depuis des siècles.
Madam Jacqueline, what is your view on that? How is this problem coming up again?
All about the industries. Most of the industries that I've been in, they are using firewood in order to process the things. And as we know that firewood produces a gas, carbon dioxide gas. And when this carbon dioxide gas is emitted, it forms a blanket. When this blanket is formed, it traps the air, it traps the sun, thereby releasing a change of climate. Thereby, we should look for ways in which we should produce our materials from industry without using, e.g., things like firewood, and we find something else that we'll use that will not emit more carbon dioxide to the air. In that way, we'll reduce the global warming problem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Karuga.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, when you talk about industrialization, we have the positivity of the same and we also have the negativities of the same. The positivities, I would like to say they are more than the negativities. That means we have more advantages than the disadvantages. Other than the so many advantages that come with industrialization, we have this one major disadvantage, the global warming. These industries are emitting a lot of gases which are not environmental friendly. Talk about carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbon, talk about methane. These gases are produced by this industry as a result of use of fossil fuels. Now, to solve this, these industries have solved so many problems. They have dealt with problems like unemployment, food insecurity, and so on. But when they are part of the solution, they are part of the problem, there are two parts of the solution. They can help us. They can come up with some mechanisms, like, for example, catalytic conversion. This is the process whereby harmful gases are converted to less toxic substances like water. In the process, you are going to reduce the emissions. That is method number one of curbing this menace. Number two, we can talk about green energy. Instead of using fossil fuel, we can embrace some environmental friendly methods like use of green energy. Talk about geothermal power. You can also talk about wind power. You can also talk about solar energy. These are more environmental friendly methods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Pamela.
Yes, thank you. Now, we know that industrialized nations have moved a step higher than Africa. And so every African country would also like to industrialize so that we can also move in terms of having food security, in terms of higher incomes for our people, and so on. But we can see repercussions from the West, and we are not willing to go the same way. So I would suggest that in Africa, as we carry out development, we have to adhere to sustainable development. And how are we going to promote sustainable development? I will concur with Mr. Karuka that we need the green energy. We need to develop technologies that would help us harness the green energy. In terms of industries, we need to come up with technologies that would ensure that a waste from one factory would become an input in another industry.
Yes.
So that by the end of the day, there are no wastes produced within a setup of industries.
Yes.
So that we minimize on wastes. And at that time also, we will minimize the harvesting of natural resources because the waste becomes inputs for others.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
again,
very
I
much. Yes.
concur with Madam Pamela and biochemistry Samuel Karuga
Yes.
that we need really to have a solution. And one of the solutions is adopting new model of plant organization. Because when we look at Africa, we look again in Africa, we have a scattered model, what you call traditional way of living. And we need to adopt what we call model plan urbanization, whereby houses are being set, compact, less polluted cities along safer and more sufficient public transport. We can embrace from there. I'm telling you, rivers are drying up, lakes are drying up. You no longer depend upon dams to generate energy, because compared to early, as the report released by IPCC, that is Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change,
Yes.
2001, it shows that things like Mount Kilimanjaro, on top of it, the glacier is
Reducing. Yes.
That's affecting what we call waterless in lower zone.
Yes.
So we have to embrace what we call waste, human waste, to have more inventors, I mean.
Yes.
And people who discover how waste, like Madam Pamela has pointed out, we can use that waste, maybe human waste, to create energy. And this, by doing what we call embracing modern technology, whereby houses have been connected, they have been directed and one channel so that we can use human waste to create energy. I'm telling you, we'll be at a safer side.
Yes. In fact, okay, you have talked of the drying up of the ice, the snow cap on the mountains, and we find that Mount Kilimanjaro is facing that challenge so high. And the reason why it's facing that is because of the surrounding environment. The surrounding environment is becoming a problem until the snow cap of the mountain is getting reduced. And in that also we find that with that reduction, it makes that, you see, the reason of that, the mountain there was so much important and valuable to the tourists when it used to have that snow.
Yeah.
But now when the snow is reducing, it is becoming valueless. It will be just a hill or a mountain with no value to the country, to the income of the country.
And again, when we
Yes.
talk about mountain and we talk about water, it goes hand in hand with agriculture.
Yes.
Because we need water to irrigate
The agricultural production.
And Oxfam, the report released by Oxfam, 20 million people in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia are dying for food.
Yes.
The rainfall has been below average between 2010 to 2011.
Yes.
You see, still Africa needs solution.
And the major problem of Africa is poverty. That is why the solution has to come as early as yesterday, so that the problem of poverty in Africa can easily be reduced. Mr. Karuga.
Yes, to add on the point of ice on the top of mountain, you have mentioned Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
When this earth temperature are high,
Yes.
the ice definitely is going to melt. True?
Yes.
Secondly, this ice will change into water, definitely. The water will overflow our rivers,
Yes.
our lakes, our seas. As a result,
all goes to the ocean.
All to the ocean.
Yes.
As a result of this, we shall have rivers bursting, dams overflowing,
Yes.
everything. So we are going to have floods.
Floods.
That is very true.
Yes.
Another point, when we have water all over, these are breeding sites for some vectors,
Yes.
like the mosquito.
Which cause problem.
Yeah, which causes disease like malaria,
Yes.
typhoid, the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is majorly, we find there is also all that problem which comes as a result of this global warming.
Thank you very much. Apart from maybe the melting of the ice,
Yes.
we also realize that a country like Kenya, for example, 2/3 of the country falls in the arid and semi-arid lands.
Yes.
Now, with the increase in temperature, the land is drying up.
Yes.
And as such, we have a lot of problems: water shortage, pasture shortage, and therefore bringing about conflicts in the semi-arid zones. So it is very important that we find a solution before the problem is out of hand. Another problem with the increase in temperatures is the issue of pests and parasites as well as diseases. Of recent, we have had a problem of armyworms
Yes.
in Kenya, and it affected so many farms, the maize, and led to reduction of the maize yield.
Yes.
Yeah, and like now, in areas that used to be very cold, like Molo, at the moment the temperatures have risen, and we are also facing the problem of malaria, which in the earlier years
it was not there.
It was never there.
Yes.
So there's really a major problem that we need to sort out.
Definitely, there is that problem. Now, we have agreed there is this problem. What is the way forward? What do we have to do? Not as a country, not as a continent, but as world at large. Starting with an individual, with a group, and all over the world. Everybody is crying about the problem of global warming. What is the way forward to reduce this problem? Let me start with Madam Jacqueline.
Okay, we are looking for the solution of this global warming.
Yes.
And first of all, the solution of global warming does not start far away. It starts from me, you, and the rest.
Yes.
So if you start from you, for example, you're going to purchase a refrigerator, you're going to purchase a gas, you have to look for a government label. That means it has been authorized by the government to be used.
Yes.
And there's no effect to human beings or to the environment.
Yes.
Second, when you're going to buy a car, there are these cars, these motor vehicles which are moving around, they emit some gases. Those gases are very dangerous. What do? When you're going to purchase a car, you look for a car that reduces gas mileage and emissions, and that uses efficient energy.
Recent, I was watching China.
Yes.
The IPCC has released again another report showing that China is a major cause of global warming. Because most of industry have run to China. Because of cheap labor.
Yes.
And the country is suffering a lot. And because in Earth we are one.
Yes.
Be it in China, we are occupying one Earth.
Yes.
It's affecting really Africa. And as Madam has pointed out, Africa consumes only 4% of its gas emission, but Africa is dearly paying the price.
It is the one which is affected most.
Paying the price.
Yes.
So, there's a solution here. I was looking to the internet and I saw somebody has invented a car which doesn't need
Fuel.
And I see that is a great solution that will help reducing carbon emission into
the atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, you are talking of that, and I remember sometimes back there was a trial of implementing that use of a fuel-free car, even here in Uganda. There is some guy who tried to invent a car using solar panel.
But the problem comes here,
Yes.
that those countries which God has blessed them with oil do refuse to pass that rule.
Yes.
Because they will be affected in one way or another. Because again, we should look that we are in a market fight.
Yes.
Market war.
Every country fight for its own resources.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's upon these bodies that have been formed to ensure that they create a rule that will enable